I think a lot of men are carrying a chip on their shoulder about the world. I know I was.
Oh man, yeah.
I thought the whole world was wrong, not getting who I truly was. And then all the while I had not realized that I had abandoned myself.
You know, one of the truly wonderful things to come out of doing the True Man podcast is the number of relationships that have been built as we near, believe it or not, the 100th episode of the podcast. And one of those relationships has turned into a really nice partnership, I think. In fact, an online Google search brings us together because of his idea around creating the True Man journey. So welcome back to the podcast, Luc Cardinal. And you're going to have to say your name because I love the way you say it, man. I got to tell you that French accent.
Luc Cardinal in
So
French.
yeah, there
Luc
it is.
Cardinal
There it is.
in English.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I love it. So he's my true man brother from the great white north of Canada. And he's an international speaker and NeuroCoach who works with top team leaders to achieve higher individual and collective performance. And today we're going to talk more about a collaborative cohort we're doing together. So, Luc, it is great to have you back on the True Man podcast.
Well, it's awesome to be here, Mike, and I'm so excited about the ways that we came together, as you said just before, maybe to illustrate that to the ones who were wondering, what, the Google search? Yeah, I had a True Man journey that I put out there, and that's actually my wife that said, oh, I wonder if there's the True Man is out there somehow, because we know that when ideas come in, somehow we don't seem to be the only ones receiving those ideas. There seems to be other men. And lo and behold, the True Man podcast was out there, and I connected with you, and then eventually decided to do the True Man journey together. So it's very, very exciting to see how when we open up, when we're not so stuck on our old ways, that things start showing up for all of us. And we both of us are gaining into this and learning from one another. And isn't that what the True Man work is all about? Is to open up again to other men in a way that introduces them really into our life, as opposed to being sort of on the sidelines.
Yeah, no, it totally is. And you know, I've been at this long enough, almost 2 years now. So we've knocked out, you know, almost 100 episodes. And if there's one thing that I've learned is there are so many different men out there that want to help other men and are doing all kinds of wonderful things. And I just get so much fulfillment in having them on the podcast and hearing their story. And, you know, again, one of the cool things is this whole concept around the True Man journey and working on a collaborative partnership with you so that men can be the men that they want to be. So let's talk about that a little bit and what we're doing and what you've built. It was really, you know, a platform, your body of work that brings us all together. Let's talk about this idea of how can a man be the man he wants to be? How can we help them with this?
Well, I think it's actually even more difficult to figure out nowadays because what's really showing up for all of us is like being in your heart and adopting feminine values, and the corporate world having been cut out from their emotions, and then so much information comes to us as men, where you start wondering, well, what is being a man now? Like, we just don't know. And so it's been a long exploration of mine. I know it's been one for you as well. So, and it's the question, you know, what is a man today? And am I the man I've always wanted to be? The thing that I've noticed, and working with many men, of course, is that we're trying to adapt ourselves to different situations because we need to feel that there's security around us. Security is not only having a roof up above your head and having something to eat, but is to have an environment where you can express yourself, where you can say what you need to say. Also, we have a need for belonging. We need to be part of a family, of a team, whether it's at work or elsewhere. And then we need to feel credible. We need to feel like we're offering something to the world that is of ours. And when you're able to take care of that, the funny part of it all is that when you're able to take care of your security needs, your belonging needs, and your credibility needs consciously, then something opens up. It's almost like the part of you that's scared, that has a hard time figuring out things, sort of moves to the sidelines, and then your heart starts opening up and taking the lead into your life. And so with so many men, what I'm seeing is a lot of men aren't the men they wanted to be. And it's just that they're searching out there for something. And maybe we have something to offer them. But what they'll realize if they take part of the journey is that it's always been it's always been inside. And all we're doing, you and I, is to help them move towards what scares them sometimes the most, is to reopening to who they truly are, their heart. And it comes from the heart. And it's coming from the heart. As a matter of fact, that's why, as part of promoting the True Man Journey, starting on the 9th of April, that we've actually put some webinars together. And the first one being, what does being in your heart mean? So you and I will be talking about that with the men that are going to be on that Zoom, and trying to answer that question together. Because the last thing I would want men listening to this podcast to think is that we have all the answers. We're on that quest. We may have a bit more answers than others because we've been on that quest. I know I've been on that quest for many, many, many years. But I'm not like, I know and I'm going to teach you. This is not the attitude. This is more like listening, offering a space also for men to be together. Because on the last journey that we had, I had many feedback from many men who were really thankful for it. But one that captured my imagination was the following. He says, every time I hear about man coming together, it's about a fire in the wood. And he said, that's fine. But finally here now with the True Man Journey, we have a place where we can talk about communications with ourselves, communications with the others, with my wife. And it's almost like what he was saying is that I've learned to communicate again in a way that opens it up for me around me. Because, if we don't know who we are, and it's difficult to be our own man and to live our life on our own terms and to be free to be us, if we're in that space, communication is not very good. So we're able now to let men see that, hey, you're not the only one. And let's talk about this and see how we can help you to sort of get out of there so that you can truly express yourself.
Yeah, it's interesting. Luc, I go to a number of men's events, and more times than not, they circulate around hanging out around a fire. And that is a wonderful thing. It is. And I enjoy it. I'm an outdoorsy guy. I love being outdoors. I love walking, running, but I particularly like playing golf. And most men's events do not circulate around playing golf. They just, it's golf is golf. But what's interesting is, and I think the importance of what we're doing is, some guys don't like some of that stuff. And so we need to provide some degree of flexibility, I think, hanging around a fire or, going on a boat trip or golfing is great. But we really need an intentional place to go have these conversations so that we can be better, not just as men. Of course, that's part of it. But if we're better as men, we can be better for our families. And so that's what I love about this and the opportunity that we're offering men to jump into so that they can learn more about their how to communicate and be the men that they want to be.
Yeah, it's so important, and what I'm witnessing a lot is men are afraid of communicating how they truly feel, and oftentimes it's
not taught,
actually comes from
that's it's not taught. So I mean, we kind of have to, I don't want to say you make it up as you go, but I mean, in a lot of cases, you make it up as you go.
Well, and you got to learn that. What is really scary in communication, which is for most men communicating how they truly feel, is actually where we need to go. And so there has to be some support for that to happen. It's very difficult. It is possible to do it on your own, but when there's a group of men that actually truly listen, truly gets you, and helps you to see that you need to cut through the bullshit about who you think you have to be or do, so you can stop restraining your full expression and live the highest truth in your personal and professional life. That happens when a lot of men can truly listen to one another. And then you can get results without having to push, pull, or fight people or a situation. That's being your own man. And it is difficult. So that's why we've created those programs to help men be out there doing what they love and being the man that they've always wanted to be. And you know what? This is what women need as well.
I would say it's not only what they need, it's what they want. You know, I was at an event recently, and the gentleman that was there was telling a story about his wife, who owns a women's hair salon. And he actually said, and it almost caught me off guard, that one of the conversations they have in that shop that she's told him about is this idea around men being passive. And I thought, wow, it's one thing for men to have that conversation, but for women to have that conversation, essentially saying, yeah, we don't want passive men in our life. I thought, wow, that's pretty fascinating, you know? And, you know, if men are being passive, and for the most part they are, if men are not being their masculine selves, then we need to create an environment where they can learn how to do that and not be afraid of that, right? After all, despite what some people in the media may say, men are men and women are women. And we're different to a large degree, and we need to figure out how to coexist together. And one of the best ways to do that, in my view, is that we learn as men from each other. You know, we lift each other up where we're, potentially weak, and learn from other people where they're strong. And that's to me the gist of doing these types of seminars and workshops.
Right on. And you know what the story you just told reminds me of one that I heard very recently from a really good friend of mine. Her name is Lisa, and she hasn't had a man in her life for many years now. And I asked her, what's going on? You know, do you want to stay alone, and that's fine, or do you want that? Well, the thing is there are no men out there. So what do you mean? I mean, they're not standing up. Like they're so what she's witnessing, maybe that's her life, and not all women would say the same thing. But I've heard many women say that. It's like men somehow aren't standing up for who they are and for their word. I mean, that's the one thing that touched me the most, I think, in this work, is how we don't realize that we say things, but then we don't follow up on what we say. We're not being our word. And well, between us, we can say, oh, you know, he's just not feeling it today, or whatever it might be. But what are we doing? What are we doing to the next generation, to children? As fathers, you know, if we say something and we don't deliver on what we said, what are they learning? And I can tell you from a neuro-coaching point of view, what they're learning is to not trust the universe, not trust God, not trust out there. So out there becomes foreign and dangerous. Yeah. Is that how we want our children to live our life? So I think as men, we need to take back that responsibility that we are creators. We're action beings. And to be creators and action beings, we got to create and have actions that come from a much better place than just our ego, or just showing up something, or just making people believe something. We have to come from something that's really solid, which is who we truly are. And you know what I love about this work is that it sounds like, for a lot of men, like they're going to have to do a lot of work. And for some, they may be right, but it's a lot easier than you think when you're surrounded with other men that get it. And what is it to get? I think what is it to get first is that you're not responsible for the life that you have now if you've been stressed. And that's the one of the expertise that I bring, stress, a lot of people talk about stress, but not that many make the link, the bridge between the fact that being stressed is actually removing our connection to the top of our brain. It's called cortical inhibition, and that disconnects us from our hearts. And so we learn to control emotions. And through that process, 15, 20 years later, we don't control emotions anymore. We ignore that world, that of emotion. And ignoring emotion is ignoring our hearts. So it's like we're in this vicious circle. And to snap out of it is and that's what we talk about a lot in the journey, is you want to find ways to reconnect the top of your brain, which then helps you reconnect into your heart, which then helps you reconnect into your instinct. And when I say about brain, heart, and instinct, by the way, I'm talking about the three brains. Because yes, we have three brains, one in the head, one in the heart, and one in the gut. The one in the head, we can call it cognition, the thinking patterns. The one in the heart, we can call it intuition, emotions. And the one in the gut, we can call it instinct. And when you can run your life having the information that comes from those three brains be coordinated inside of you, the actions you take are like, this is where you need to go. Even if you're scared, it doesn't matter. You're going. Because it's a yes, it's a full yes. And maybe that's the one thing that I'd want to leave men as a message to ponder on is are you, when you're saying yes or no, are you being true to yourself, and does it resonate in you? Like when you say yes to something, is there a part that says no, or is there a part that says no way, but hey, I got to do this, or no way, but she won't love me if I don't, and so you're not integrated, you're not being coherent. A man really feels powerful when he's connected to his vision, his gift to the world, who he truly is. And when he says yes, all of those parts are saying yes. You're being coherent. And that's what this is about. And then you can live your life on your own terms. You feel on track, you feel powerful, fulfilled, fully embracing all that you are and can be.
I love that. You just dropped so many nuggets and all that, but let's circle back to something that I really think is important. And that's a man's heart, because it's so, we so ignore this, because we get in our heads and we stop and we, as you said, ignore our hearts. Why do men do that, in your opinion?
Because we've been hurt. We've been true. We've had our heart fully open in front of others. Maybe when we were young, in front of girls, and we got ridiculed, laughed at, put aside, and we figured out a way that we need to protect that. The wisdom of it.
Right.
I mean, that's the one thing that I'm floored every time I see that. Is it looks like, I closed my heart and I shouldn't have. No, you had to. You had to protect this gem. And even in sexual terms these days, what's coming out? And of course, I'm surrounded with men, and I'm a coach, and I'm a NeuroCoach, and so I'm in those kinds of conversations.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, all of the time. And the thing that's coming out now is that we've always thought that when it comes to sexuality, man it's about sex. So we can come down to our organ and say, this is what man is about, and women is all in their heart. Well, lo and behold, what's coming out is what the man has to offer is his heart.
Yeah.
And what women have to offer is open up to us, so we can feel the vibration of who we are, and feel our woman really gets us, receives us, opens the door to us. But that happens when you're here with your heart. So it's almost like everything's upside down. And yeah, so the wisdom of the heart, we'll be speaking a lot more about that on March 22nd. And of course, men will be able to find their way to that Zoom and register themselves to that. But such a conversation. But did I answer your question, or did I I
Yeah,
tend to
absolutely.
talk in so many ways
No,
that
no. I mean, I just think it's so important because, whether you're a man or a woman, we all go through some trauma in our life. There's some interference that we run into. And ultimately, yeah, it affects our mind, but it also affects our heart and our ability to connect with other people. And what I find more times than not, as I talk with men, is that, yeah, they may be carrying around something, but ultimately, where it seems to come out is in their relationships. And that really comes from intimacy and hearts connecting. And when your heart's been hurt by a trauma or something in your life, it is hard to have intimacy with somebody else. And so, you see the divorce rate in this country well over 50%. It's ticked up since, the COVID. I guess I guess we were all too close to each other and some people found out it wasn't working out. I don't know. But, there has to be um a healing of your heart from whatever, and a healing of your mind from whatever has tripped you up somewhere along life. And you need to do some, when we talk about doing work, you're going to need to do maybe a little work in that area to get you to a point where you, and this sounds so simple, but you like yourself. Because if you don't like yourself, you can't love somebody else. Is that what you've experienced, Luke?
oh, for sure. And you talk about relationships, especially intimate relationships. It seems to be uh, an alchemy happening in those intimate relationships. There's no better place to learn about yourself. And a lot of men are actually going to those relationships like pointing outside for their troubles and their difficulties.
Yeah, right.
And what I keep saying to my clients is fine, but now point into the mirror.
Yeah.
If you have something on your nose and you look at in the mirror, you're not going to scratch the mirror, are you? So it's a metaphor for something's not going right in your life, and you point at your spouse, you point at your children, you point at your boss. Okay, fine. Now understand that it's like scratching your nose on the mirror. You got to come back to you. You got to scratch your own nose. You got to look at your own heart. And what I was saying earlier, and I think that I'd like to add to all of that, is that it was wisdom that had us close our heart. We had to protect this gem of ours. But now the world needs us to open it up again. And it's difficult when it's been closed for so many years. It's like a way of being somehow. And it's really scary for a lot of men to be in those conversations.
Yeah.
The first man weekend that I attended was like in 1995. And I realized in that weekend, being in a long 3.5 day weekend with 250 men, that I had no relationship with other men.
Yeah.
And when I was in a party, I would often find myself in the kitchen speaking with women because somehow they had more interesting conversations going on. They talked about life. They talked about their difficulties. They talked about their man. And all it seemed I could speak of with other men was sports and whatever else we talked about. And all the while not realizing that I was the one that was closed. But I thought every other man had nothing to say. So I would point to the outside, not realizing that I had to look on the inside. So when you talk about some work, that's the work, is to turn our attention to the inside, to turn our attention to ourselves. And this is not being, what's the expression? Égoïste in French, ego-central, or how do you say that?
I don't know. I like the way you said it in French.
Yeah. Yeah, egoist. So it's not about being egoist. It's about relearning who you truly are. And because, in the journey, yeah, we give all kinds of ways to do that and all kinds of techniques because man needs stuff they can identify with. Techniques, we can. But eventually then we all realize that it's about turning inside to look at ourselves. And so we help them to do that. And eventually then you can come out there and you can be free to be you. Because when you know in your gut, heart and soul who you are, you don't have to sacrifice who you truly are anymore. You can be the consistent higher performance leader, because that's what it's about. Enjoying joyful and deeply satisfying relationships. And I would say the number one thing is to be in peace with yourself and the world. I think a lot of men are carrying a chip on their shoulder about the world. I know I was.
Oh man, yeah.
I thought the whole world was wrong, not getting who I truly was. And then all the while I had not realized that I had abandoned myself.
It's gosh, just hearing those words, be at peace with the world. There's so much there's so much going on in the world that is just really, really negative. And what I'm finding, and I've always known it to be true, the news media outlets, and I'm using news media generically because it's not just your local 5 o'clock news. It's it's in newsprint. We have a 24/7, 365 news media because you can just go online and Google anything. And if you really choose to be stressed, or discouraged or angry or pissed off or whatever the case may be, all you have to do is Google the news and it could make you wildly angry. Luc, why is that a bad idea?
Well, I remember when I was a kid getting up about 6 o'clock in the morning, grabbing a glass of milk and cookies to go by myself, watch TV. And oftentimes I would arrive on the TV, was not even started yet. And then back in Canada, it was the map of Canada with an Indian on top. But when it would start, it would say, here is your programming for the day. And of course, I was really happy because especially Saturday morning, it would be cartoons and stuff. But then I didn't realize that it took me quite a while to figure out programming. What are they saying? So it's if you don't know this, you want to know this. I guess it all started with sales and marketing. We're finding ways. How do human beings react, psychologically speaking? And how do we sell those products? And how do we have them have the right reflex, which is to buy our products and all of that stuff? But that, you talk about the media, it almost became what this is. And
it's like psychological warfare.
Yeah. And the other thing that I find really interesting that will really illustrate that, and that's based on data of one man, but true data of one man that a colleague of mine was working with. And that man was hooked up to some technologies measuring his heart coherence or heart rate variability for 72 hours. And then the man had to report on a website his activities of the day. And when we looked at the data, his highest stress point, because measuring HRV, I won't get into details, it actually is measuring the stress levels of the individual at a very deep level. So we would notice that his stress level was the highest at 11 o'clock at night. So we went to the website to see what is he doing at 11. And the man reported watching the news, and that period being his favorite part of the day where he could relax. But his heart was saying, we're not relaxing here. We're stressed out of our mind. But here's what's happening. And that also is scientifically demonstrated, is when you're in front of the TV set, as an example, or you're watching a video on Facebook or whatever it might be, your thinking patterns, which take energy, are being, because what's thinking? It's electrical patterns in the brain. So it takes your energy. It takes energy to have 55,000 thoughts a day, which is the average of man now in the world, according to the National Science Foundation. So when you watch a program, you feel like it's, finally, because you don't have to think anymore. It's thinking for you. This is deep stuff. It's almost wicked if you don't know it. So you think you're relaxing, but technology is proving that you're not. And of course, for that man, that was quite a revelation, because once he knew about it, then he thought, well, let me take a second look. Is it really? Am I really relaxed? And of course, then you go to bed with all this bad news. Also, that's something we know. The
Yeah.
thing you fall asleep with. Did you notice that you fall asleep thinking of a bad relationship and you wake up thinking about it? So, and of course, a lot of technologies now that have to do with heart coherence, that have to do with visioning, that have to do with programming your own life, they all agree. Do what you need to do, that when you fall asleep, you're content, you're at peace, you're connected, and you'll wake up that way. And somehow it makes, as you do that every day, it makes every day better. So what are we realizing now is that we are creating our world. We are the creators of our reality. And I think most men that I've dealt with absolutely agree with that. Yeah, I'm creating my reality, but somehow 50% of the time for a lot of them, which is when it actually is a reality that they like, because they had a project, they were working on it and they had success. But somehow all the areas that aren't working in their life, no, that's not, it's life. It's circumstances. It's not me anymore. Well, let's have a look at that.
I was actually hoping you'd tell the story about that guy watching the news. I've heard you tell that story before, and I think that's important because and you're capturing this idea around programming. I think is so key, because we're being programmed on a daily basis, and it could be the internet, it could be the television, it could be the newspaper, it could be your phone, stuff you look at on your phone. We are being programmed on a daily basis to not think for ourselves, but think the way somebody else is actually telling us to think. And that's dangerous. That's dangerous. So, Luc, let's talk about how we reprogram our brains. And that's part of the reason why I think we're putting our little program together here for everybody is so that we can give men an outlet and tangible things to do so that they can reprogram themselves to be a positive person, not just for themselves, but for their families. So let's talk a little bit about what does that look like? What are we going to do here with the True Man Journey to help these guys reprogram themselves in a positive and authentic way?
Well, it's a great question, Mike. One of the things is to first admit to yourself that you don't have the life that you would like to have.
Yeah.
I think that's a big first step. And then in terms of reprogramming, then the second thing would be to not necessarily see what we're saying as the truth, but try it out for a while. Okay, let's pretend for a while I'm being programmed. That's the second step. You gotta open up that might be a possibility.
I just thought when you said that, it just totally captured me. And I'm like, wow, that is a strong word. Programming is a strong word. The fact that somebody else could be sticking messages out there and they're sticking. And you and I both know that's the case. I mean, some of that stuff just goes, and that's a whole other discussion. It just supplants itself in our subconscious mind, whether we know it's happening or not. And so, we've got to, the whole purpose of this is to give you ways to attach yourself to stuff so you can arm yourself for these people that are trying to program you.
Absolutely. And then at some point you see it very clearly.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you reprogram yourself? It's a question of habit. You got to have new habits. If you want new behaviors, if you want new results, of course you have to have new habits. So through the journey, through the 7-week journey, it's a 7-week journey, we actually give you tools to build those new habits. And we give you an accountability partner so that you can change those habits, because that's the difficult part.
Yep.
There's something called homeostasis in the body, which says, oh, let's try to find equilibrium without spending too much energy. Now we need to get out of our comfort zone. So that takes more energy. No, let's go there. So it's difficult at the beginning. That's why doing it on your own is more difficult than doing it in a group. That's why we have cohorts, so that men come together and advance through the journey together. So it's through repetition. You got to repeat something new. So eventually, and the first thing that needs to happen is that for a new habit to be formed, to reconnect the top of your brain and your heart and your gut all of the time. And I keep saying this, and a lot of men are getting it now. So what does it mean when you don't have access to the top of your brain? It means that you're disconnected from your own source. When you're disconnected from your own source, you still need energy to happen so that you can go about doing the things you need to do in your life. That energy is stored right underneath the belly button. It's called a chi energy. It's called the tantien in martial arts. So that basin of energy, you could call it's right where the gut feeling is. You know, we all have those expressions in language that directs us at some technology, if you want to say it that way, that we have in our body. So that gut feeling, what is that? It's energy. And that energy, we can call it the fire of passion. You know, when you're passionate, it's got to burn. That fire's got to burn, Mike. But when you're disconnected from the source, from your source, from who you truly are, the fire still has to burn. So you will have a lot of conflicts around in your life, difficulties, lack of expression, because it has the fire burning. Then you'll be able to have a beer with a friend and say, oh, you know what happened with my wife, da, 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 da. Or you know what happened with my colleague, and oh, my boss is such a dick, and da, da, da. Then you get into those stories and you build up energy to feel alive based on conflicts only because you're disconnected. And I've had this message given to many men for many years now because it makes it simpler. I mean, we can go so many ways about this. The first thing is you got to acquire your habits to reconnect yourself, because here's what's happening. When you actually start reconnecting with your source, that it's almost like you wake up from a bad dream, and then you realize that all those relationships are turning sour, and it's because you're not fully expressing yourself. You're not telling the truth. You're not saying what you really need to be saying. And that's because you've been all closed up. Well, that's because you've disconnected. So you're creating those conflicts in your life without knowing, simply because in the mechanic of a human being, the fire's got to burn. But now the source of the fire is those bad vibes all around you, as opposed to being connected to your source, to the universe, to God, to call it the way you want to call it, that thing that we all know exists, which is beyond ourselves.
I hope you guys picked up on the passion that Luc brings to this and the knowledge, because it's amazing and fires me up. So let's do something. I'm going to put all of this information in the show notes, and of course we'll be promoting this upcoming cohort. But Luc, give everybody some dates and how they can. Basically, you're going to be able to connect with Luc on his website, off my website, and all the information is on both of our websites. So there's great information out there for you. But Luc, tell everybody how they connect, you know, and what we're going to do and some of the dates that are going on around this whole cohort thing that we're getting ready to do.
Absolutely, Mike. That's going to be a pleasure. So we want you to come into the journey knowingly, and we want you to experience what it's like to be amongst men before you commit yourself to the journey. So what we've done is we've put together 3 webinars. It's all when we meet before the journey and within the journey. It's always Wednesday nights. So we have a first webinar on the 22nd of March, which focuses on what does it mean being in your heart. We want to go deeper into that question. On the 29th of March, the conversation will be your true genius. What is your true genius? How can you connect back to something you had that you still have, but you've just been disconnected from, which is called your true genius? On the 5th of April, the webinar is going to focus on the satisfaction of being you. What does that mean? What is being satisfied of being you, only you, all of you? That's going to be the topic. And that will lead into the opening, with all the men that are going to register into the journey. The opening of the console, if you will, is going to happen on April 9th. So what does that mean? online trainings that are backed up by live shows, live conversation that we're going to have in this journey have a 15% completion rate when people are just all over the place, not doing it together. This is why the decision's been made, because completion rate is above 85% when we advance as a group, as a cohort. So the cohort, the men that are going to be part of it, will come together alone at the beginning on April 9th. The console opens. Now they have videos to watch. They have stuff to read. They have exercises to do that prepares them for the live on the Wednesday happening the next week, which is April 19th, which is the first live within the journey. So that's the introduction to the True Men journey. And then the week after, we talk about stress. And the week after, we talk about, okay, so how do you get out of stress? And how do you reconnect back to who you are? And the week after, we talk about being the creator of your reality consciously, to be conscious of doing that for yourself. And eventually we'll come to the conclusion. I won't get in all the details, but all this information is on a sales page that actually gives you everything you need to know. And the link, I know Mike will put it where the podcast is. All the information will be there. But basically, you can come to 1 webinar, 2 webinars, 3 webinars. This is all free. Those are 90-minute seminar, a lot of value that we're giving away. Why are we doing that? Because beyond having man being on the journey, this is why I was born. This is why I'm here. I'm really, truly here to help men get out of the bullshit that they're telling themselves so that they can actually open their hearts again and offer the world a better world by being themselves. This is where it starts. And where was I with all of that? Yeah, then we have the journey, 7 weeks. And then we'll see when men need more support, there's coaching available. There's also ways to be in touch with me or with you to have conversations. If you're shy about conversing with many men, but you want to ask a question, then basically we're making it so that there's no way if something tells you I ought to look there, I ought to maybe be part of this, there's no way that we won't be there for you to make that happen for yourself. Because we were saying it before recording the podcast, how we'll find 100 zillion reasons not to go where we know we need to go. So we'll take away as many of those reasons as possible so that you can actually move forward and do this for yourself.
Yeah. I mean, listen, here's a point blank statement, right? Somebody just heard that and they went, I need to do it. Do it. Because I know what you're thinking right now, and you could come up with 100 excuses why not to take action on your life. Do not do that. Trust me on that. I've done it. Luke's done it. You'll be chasing your tail for the rest of your life if you keep doing that. This is an opportunity to have a pause moment and to learn more about how you can be the very best man you can be, and your family will love you that you did that. And most importantly, you'll love you for doing that.
Oh yeah, that's well said. And let me just say a few comments that men have left us after doing the journey. And then pick up on those, see if there's something you'd like to say. Lewis from Ohio says, this is the most impactful instruction that I can recall. Richard from Georgia says, my mind is not racing anymore. I am a much better listener. Philip from Geneva, which is Switzerland, says, straight to the point, hands-on journey with great added value. Don says, I am more creative, I listen better, and I have a better handle on my emotions. And I say, great program, because I'm actually reading off the website. And I made a joke to myself. I put great program. And so I'm in the testimonials, if you will. And I said, this is by far the best online leadership training out there, man training out there. Simple yet insightful. It gives you fundamental knowledge and tools to connect to your natural leadership. Okay, it is my program, but I like to blow my own horn. So we can have some humor in there too.
Yeah, no, true. And listen, what that's funny. I think we'd be remiss by not saying that when we partake in these things, even as the leaders doing it, we get so much from it. And so you can only imagine how much you can get from it yourself by maybe this is the first time you've ever considered anything like this. But I just encourage you to take action on it, because it's an amazing journey that you can walk through with other men to just better yourself. And that makes life so much better. That's just what I found. I know Luc's found it too. So Luc, thanks for being on the podcast with us today. It was so much fun talking about this. And I look forward to our journey together as we carry this out for other men. And I look forward to men jumping on this cohort so that they can be the men that they want to be. So again, Luc, thanks for being on the True Man podcast.
Thank you, Mike. Thanks for having me.
All right. Take care.